Hi, this is Mark Evanstein with music.py, and this is a Python music short. So for today's Python music short, I thought I'd make a little interactive mouse music. So let's start with this. For any script using the scamp libraries, you want to say from scamp import star to import everything, and you want to create a session, and we're going to call it S. And then if you want something that responds to the mouse, basically you have to create a function that gets called every time the mouse moves. So we're going to call that mouse move listener. It's going to take the X and Y coordinates, and right now we're just going to print the X and Y coordinates. Finally, you have to tell the session to register that mouse listener and pass the mouse move listener to the onMove keyword argument, since the mouse listener could also be responding to clicks or presses or releases or that kind of thing. We're also going to turn on relative coordinates equals true. That just makes the X and Y values go from 0 to 1 instead of like 0 to 1920 or whatever your width of the screen is. Finally, we're going to say s.waitForever just to make sure that we keep the script alive so that it can respond to the mouse move commands. Okay, so if we run this, then every time I move the mouse, you see the coordinates printed at the bottom. If we get rid of relative coordinates equals true, and we run it again, then you'll see we actually get the pixel values. But since we're doing a kind of musical mapping with the X and Y coordinates, it's just easier if we normalize them from the get-go. So there's one other thing that I want to add to this, which is that I want to know how far the mouse has moved since last time to kind of calculate its speed. So I'm going to create a variable called last position and have it just start out at 0, 0. And then every time the mouse moves, I'm going to say dx, dy equals x minus last position 0, y minus last position 1. And then I'm going to let last position equal x, y. There's one other gotcha here. Because I'm setting the value of last position, and last position is a global variable, not inside the function, I'm going to have to say global last position here. So now, instead of printing x and y, I'm going to print dx and dy. And let's take a look at what gets printed. Okay, so when I move the mouse upward, we get a little bit of y here. When I move it left to right, we get a little bit of x. It's a little bit hard to read. But that should get us what we need to make this musical script. So moving over here, we're going to add all the musical elements. So we're going to import the scale object from scampextensions.pitch, and we're going to create an octatonic scale since they're just great. We'll create a new bassoon by saying s.newPartBassoon, so we're going to store that in the bassoon variable. And then here's the meat of the script. So we're going to have a countdown, and it's going to start at 0.1. So you can look and see these dx and dy values are really quite small, and they're basically calculating the distance that the mouse has traveled since the last frame as like a percentage of the width and height of the screen. Or rather, they're calculating the x distance and the y distance. If you want the actual distance, you use the Pythagorean theorem. So dx squared plus dy squared to the 0.5, so the square root. This is the distance that the mouse has traveled since the last frame. And what we're going to do is every frame we're going to subtract that from the countdown variable, which starts at 0.1. And then, if the countdown drops below 0, we play a note and reset the countdown variable. So this is going to mean that the faster you move the mouse, the quicker this countdown goes down, and the more notes that get played in the shorter span of time. As for what notes get played, the pitch of the note is going to have a lowest possible value of 34, which is the lowest note of a bassoon. A low B flat, a couple octaves below middle C. And then remember, Y goes from 0 to 1, and I've actually inverted it because by default 0 is the top of the screen and 1 is the bottom of the screen. So this number, 1 minus Y, goes from 0 to 1, and we multiply it by 40. So when we're at the top of the screen, we're going to get pitch 74, and when we're at the bottom of the screen, we're going to get pitch 34. Finally, we take whatever that pitch is, and we round it to our octatonic scale, so that it's always a note that's in the octatonic scale. The x value, we're going to map that to the volume. The duration is always going to be 0.1 since staccato on a bassoon, how can you go wrong? And then finally, we're going to make this note not blocking, which means that it's going to immediately move on. It's not going to wait for the note to finish before moving on to the next line of the script. We don't want blocking calls inside of a mouse listener, since we need to be able to get back and listen to the next mouse event. Other than that, everything is pretty much the same. Let's take a listen again. So, notice when I move the mouse slowly, just a few isolated notes. But when I move it quickly, we get a lot of notes all at once. When I'm at the left of the screen, it's quiet. When I'm at the right, it's loud. When I move down, it gets lower. The great thing about the scale object is you can really change the sound very easily. If I want to say pentatonic, the classic easy computer music decision that makes everything sound good, then let's take a listen to that. So there you go. That's some staccato bassoon mouse music. One last thing, I just want to mention, it's very easy to make very note-based pointillistic music, and I've kind of fallen into that trap here, right? You move the mouse and the bassoon plays individual notes. But you could just as well have the bassoon play some sort of a gesture. And another kind of easy default that I'm going to is just pitch and volume as what is mapping to. What else could you have the X coordinate map to and the Y coordinate map to? Let me know in the comments. Maybe we can try another video that's a little bit more creative in its mapping. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to try any of this for yourself, I've put links in the description. And also, if you're interested in a beginner-friendly way of learning to code in Python while making music, check out the link to my course on cadenze.com. Also, if you're watching this before October 15th, 2022, I'm teaching a one-off seminar on data sonification in Python. Check it out. Finally, if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, or take a nice hot bubble bath.